Remembering Olive by Liz Olbi. Time to pass the memories on. During the week of the 10th of July 2000, I organized an exhibition at Brixton Library entitled Remembering Olive, Remembering the Times. It was to be a millennium tribute to my old friend and community activist Olive Morris. I was conscious that 21 years had passed since Olive's untimely death, time in which a new generation had been born and grown, and I wondered how much of Olive's legacy had been passed on. Olive was part of a black youth movement which had developed in Britain in the 1970s, a generation that had fought against the racism of the state and society, but whose contribution seemed to have been lost somewhere between the Windrush arrivals and the 1981 riots. Olive died of Hodgkin's lymphoma on the 12th of July 1979. She was 26 years old and a highly regarded black community activist who made an indelible mark on the hearts and minds of the people who knew her. She came to Britain from Jamaica at the age of 9 to live with her parents who migrated some years earlier. She went to school in South London and was subject to all the inequalities and institutionalized racism that existed both in the British school system and the society at large. She left school aged 16 without any formal qualifications, but through her own determination and belief in herself and her abilities, she managed to achieve her O and A-level exams while working full-time and was offered a place on a degree course at Manchester University in 1975. From the age of 16, Olive was involved in grassroots political activity. She was a member of the Black Panther Movement's youth collective, based at 38 Shakespeare Road. She was active in the campaigns and issues facing black people in 1970s Britain. Example, police harassment, deaths in police custody, the campaign against the SUS laws, bad housing conditions, homelessness, issues of injustice in the courts and the prison system, and issues around education and practice of assessing black school children as educationally subnormal. She was at the forefront of black women's movement and was a founding member of the Brixton Black Women's Group in 1974, and later established the Organization of Women of Asian and African Descent, otherwise known as OWAD. Her focus was not only the local campaigns in the communities of Brixton and Manchester where she lived, but also the national and international issues of the day. Olive supported black and white workers on picket lines, marched against the 1971 immigration bill, and demonstrated outside courts, defended herself inside court, and demonstrated for the freedom of Angela Davis and the end to the Vietnam War. Supported the liberation struggles of Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, and the workers' movements in the Caribbean. When she went to live in Manchester to attend university, she became active in international students' groups and also organized women's groups in the black communities of Moss Side. At a memorial service held a few weeks after her death, hundreds of people turned out to pay tribute to her life. In 1985, to commemorate the Anti-Racism Year, Lambeth Council renamed the housing benefit offices at 18 Brixton Hill Olive Morris House to acknowledge the contribution she made to the lives of disadvantaged people living in Lambeth. It was a fitting tribute, which by the 1990s had grown into a sad irony due to the inefficient administration of housing and council tax benefit, which took place under Capita, the company employed to run the scheme. Those of us who remembered Olive would often remark that she must be turning in her grave to know what was being done to the most disadvantaged members of the community in her name. Residents would receive summons to court for bills they were not eligible to pay, or would be evicted for non-payment of rent because it took Capita over 3 months to process claims. We knew that had Olive been alive, she would have organized and demonstrated against Capita, and we will all knew that she would have brought about some effective changes. The year 2000 found a very different Brixton to the one that Olive had known. As much more prosperous place, the new inhabitants who arrived to live in Brixton since its gentrification and who received their council tax bills from the Olive Morris house had no means of accessing information about who Olive was and what she stood for. There was a plaque and photograph inside the entrance to the building, but very little else. Inquiries I made to Lambeth Archives and the Black Cultural Archives produced nothing. The Heart of the Race, a book about the history of black women's lives in Britain by Stella Datsey, Beverly Bryan, and Susan Scarf, was the one place where Olive's contribution was documented. But this was long since out of print. It seemed that so much of what Olive fought for had changed. The Brixton Community Law Centre closed. Black studies as part of the school curriculum disappeared, along with the demise of the Inner London Education Authority, LEA, which oversaw education citywide, as opposed to borough by borough. The SUS law was replaced by stop and search, and long-term school exclusions replaced educationally subnormal statements about black children, which were used to marginalize them as learning impaired. And there were still regular reports of deaths in police custody. Things had supposedly become better, and yet it seemed that so much had stayed the same. Surely then, Olive's legacy had a relevance in 21st century Brixton. I managed to contact Mike McColgan, Olive's ex-partner and long-term friend, who lived in Sheffield, and he kindly sent me his collection of photographs, letters, and Olive's university essays. He had kept her things over the years, which, with my press, clippings, and posters, formed the basis of the exhibition. My idea was to use the exhibition as a starting point to collect additional materials from those who knew Olive. I hoped that my relatively insignificant memories would provide a starting point for developing a collective memory and cultural archive to which other people who knew Olive could contribute. I felt that those of us who had known Olive needed to make sure that we passed the memories on. Brixton Library was a central location, and the exhibition was displayed in the foyer where everyone entered. I left a book for people to leave comments. There were many warm and encouraging messages left from people who had been inspired to learn something about Olive and what she had done. As part of the exhibition, a memorial gathering was held on the evening of 13th of July 2000. A dozen or so people attended, including members of Olive's family and past comrades and colleagues. My own children attended and listened as people shared their memories of Olive and of themselves. I recounted the story of when, in the summer of 1972, Olive and I hitchhiked to see Elridge Cleaver, the U.S. Black Panther Party's Minister for Information, living in exile in Algiers. We never made it to Algeria, as we ran out of money in Morocco and ended up being supported by the British consulate in Tangier, who had to contact our parents to send us money to get us back home. Following the exhibition, my son, then aged 16, remarked that he hadn't realized what an interesting life I had led. I know Olive's family were touched that her memory was being kept alive. After the exhibition in 2000, I made further attempts to discover archive material and to record people's memories of Olive, but my progress was slow. Life kept me busy with other things, and although I re-established contacts and individuals who knew Olive and who were interested to deposit their memories, I failed to follow through. 7 years passed, but in 2007, I received an email from Lambeth Libraries putting me in touch with an artist named Anna Laura, who was interested in finding out about Olive Morris, and we eventually arranged to meet. I was quite skeptical about Anna Laura initially. My reaction was, why was this white woman interested in our history? What did she plan to get out of it? But meeting her, talking with her, and getting an understanding of her work as an artist, much of which seems to me like community activism, I was reassured. In fact, I was really impressed with her energy and her spirit, and I agreed to give her access to my archive and exhibition and to work with her on the creation of a website dedicated to Olive's memory. Olive had truly arrived in the new millennium, she was about to have her own website. For my part, I had achieved what I set out to do. In October 2008, Anna Laura, others and myself formed the Remembering Olive Collective, ROC, to complete that research into Olive's life and to ensure her memory is not erased from history. Through Anna Laura's networking skills and unique personality, there has gathered a delightful group of young women who meet on the first Wednesday of every month to learn about the achievements, struggles, and rebellions of Olive and her generation. I find it a most gratifying experience to attend these meetings and to listen to the speakers who come to share their memories. My respect goes out to Anna Laura and Rock for bringing their energy and enthusiasm to my initial idea and providing me and others of my generation with a forum and opportunity to pass our memories on. Now in 2009, my papers and mics are deposited with Lambeth Archives, along with oral histories collected by ROC members. Anyone who wants to research Olive Morris, who she was, and what she stood for, has a wealth of information to access.